This podcast is part of the Pull Up a Chair podcast network. Let's build community through connection, conversation, and collaboration. This podcast is sponsored by Ep12 Consulting, editing with a purpose. Check them out at ep12consulting.com for a free consultation.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show.
Hi, I'm Jake,
And I'm V,
and you're listening to the It's Working podcast.
where we take deep dives into mental health, breaking stigmas, and starting conversations.
Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
We are not healthcare professionals, and our opinions should not be taken as facts or as medical advice. To see any sources, resources, or study we speak about in this podcast, please check out our website, linked in the description of this podcast. If you or a loved one is struggling, there is hope and there is help. Some helpful resources can be found on our website, linked in the description of this podcast. It's Working Podcast is a production from the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. All opinions in this podcast belong to our hosts and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Pull Up a Chair Foundation. Alright guys, today's episode might be a little bit of a downer.
Just a bit.
Just a little bit. We're talking about self-deprecation, which, if you've been listening to this podcast a while, or my other podcast a while, I am the queen of self-deprecation, and sitting across from me is the emperor of self-deprecation.
Oh, Emperor, okay.
I'm not going to call you king, because that would infer that we're married. And
Yeah.
No, you're an emperor, I'm a queen, different countries, separated.
I was gonna say like the Duke.
The
right?
Duke.
I think it's like the Emperor. Sounds like there's like a lot more authority there. I don't know.
I have been wanting to avoid this episode, but I know that it needs to come up because it's a really important topic. So I decided to write my notes on this one really clinically. I did a lot of research, which is not surprising. Right off the bat, before we even talk about how much self-deprecation describes both of us, let's talk about the different signs that you, our dear audience, might be suffering from self-deprecation. Are you ready for this, Jake? Are you ready to go?
I'm ready, yeah. Let's do it.
Number 1, you can't take a compliment.
Ouch.
Yeah.
Already. Number 1. Okay.
Immediately. Okay. Number 2, you instinctively downplay yourself. You guys remember our episode on imposter syndrome?
Yep.
That right there, imposter syndrome. Bam.
Mm-hmm.
Red flag. Number 3, the last one.
Mm-hmm.
You believe promoting yourself will make you disagreeable. In other words, you think people will agree with you when you downplay or speak ill of yourself. Which is the one that I think is a little bit more iffy.
Yeah.
To expand on this a little bit, there are cases when you are completely aware of how impressive your skills are or accomplishments are. However, acknowledging them, especially to strangers or peers, will leave you with the fear that they might consider you insufferable, pompous, or even worse, incorrect in your current belief system.
Oh god, not incorrect.
Not incorrect. To avoid that, you may make jokes about how little you matter or how unimportant your work is to downplay whatever achievements that you have, which ties right into imposter syndrome. And I feel like self-deprecation and imposter syndrome are I wouldn't say twin sisters, but they're definitely related.
Yeah.
You can see the family resemblance in their little faces.
They might even go hand in hand.
They might even go hand in hand. Very, very uncomfortable. Moving on from the signs of self-deprecation, there's actually a lot of impact. It doesn't just make you cringy, and it doesn't just make you insufferable. There's actual impacts done to your mental health, which is why it is a bad thing, and we should start promoting not doing it, and we should honestly start by leading from example and taking our own advice, which we're working on. Anyways, those impacts are to your self-esteem. Repeated self-deprecation can impede, decrease, and obliterate any self-esteem that you have or are trying to build up. If you suffer from any type of mental illness concerning depression or anxiety, it can heighten your feelings, sensations, and the overall experience of it, impact those symptoms. It can also affect your optimism, productivity, and positive outlook. If you're constantly thinking ill of yourself, if you're constantly looking at the bad side of everything, then obviously you're going to be a less happy person. Especially if you're invalidating every feeling that you ever have, which is something that I do a lot. A little later on in the episode, we'll talk about maintaining a healthy balance, but I think it'll be really cathartic, for me at least, to hear about your experience with self-deprecation.
Yeah, I think it started out, obviously, in, social settings, right? And I think it was more like a defense mechanism. Growing up, I was the skinny as a beanstalk. I didn't make friends very easily. I had friends, but I don't know if I was, having a whole lot of, play dates, sleepovers, anything like that. I had, school friends. I'd see them at school, that was sort of it.
Okay.
And so when the bullying started, I got bullied by this girl just non-stop in my 5th grade and 6th grade year, and I could not figure out a way to beat her. I couldn't run away from her because she would always find me. I couldn't go and ask the teacher because there was deny. I have mixed opinions on the whole get a trusted adult involved. I do think you should always get a trusted adult involved, but I don't think that when we teach our kids that is the way to problem solve, is make it someone else's problem. I don't agree with that.
It shouldn't be the only solution.
Yeah, I think get a trusted adult involved, yes, but then also what else? Because that trusted adult is not always going to know how to approach that situation or know what to do, which was the case growing up for me, because it wasn't fixed, it wasn't handled, and it did manifest later on in life in a very ugly way, which I look back on sometimes fondly, and then I also look back on in a not so great way.
I see.
There was retaliation due to years of pent up torment. All these hurt feelings sort of came up, and I retaliated, and no one was injured, but I did feel really bad afterwards because it was very out of character for me.
Yeah, you're usually very even-keeled.
I try to be. And it's for that reason, actually, of the retaliation of my bully, that I try to remain that way even now. If I'm going through something, I try to never let it eat me to the point where I need to snap at anyone. But what I learned would sort of soften the blow of being ridiculed, because it was never just with the bully. It was always in a group setting. Yeah. If I could make them laugh first, I gave them no ammo to throw at me. So I already knew their gimmick. It was always pick apart my looks, pick apart the things that I like, pick apart, how I, conduct myself.
But you're so handsome.
So I wasn't always. I was not always. There was a portion of my life where my mother got my haircuts, or picked my haircuts out for me and chose what clothes that I was going to wear to school.
Oh.
So
parents don't do that. Let your kid have some sort of body autonomy.
Well, yeah. But so I say that to say, I was goofy. I was a geek. Not a nerd, a geek. An absolute geek. And so I learned this method of being able to make the jokes that they were going to make about me first. and then it wasn't funny.
Yeah, no, it's not quite as funny
Mm-mm.
when it's from the
If
target.
it's recycled content,
Yeah.
it's less funny.
That's for all you clickbaiters out there.
Mm-hmm. But, yeah, so I adapted to that. Got a little bit more confident, but that self-deprecating sort of like style of comedy is really hard to shake.
Oh,
so
yeah,
even
absolutely.
throughout high school, I found myself still sort of like making these jokes and comments in my friend group about that. And it seemed to like work up until a certain point, and then there was a drop off. Now I try and do it less, but it's become so ingrained within. It's like you had mentioned in a previous episode that it's like almost like a keystone. Like
yes, it is
yeah.
definitely something that holds all your personality together.
Mm-hmm. Which is a shame that that's the case, because I'm trying to get better at like recognizing the things that I'm good at, and not only that, but like recognizing why. Like there's a lot of effort that goes into like the skills that I display and the things that I know how to do. And it sort of it does not do me any service to like downplay any of that. Like I'm getting more comfortable saying like I'm a good shot.
Oh, so the imposter syndrome episode, like,
It did. I took it to heart.
Good.
You know, I
Good.
went back and I listened to it a few times, and I was like, yeah, why don't I?
I'm so proud of you.
Yeah. So also taking a little bit of my own advice in that respect, but yeah. So it's not done. There's still work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
It's not finished, but certainly trying to, as we are making this podcast, like practice what we talk about.
Yeah, practice what you preach.
Yeah.
Lead by example.
Mm-hmm.
All things I'm very bad at.
Yeah. We're getting better, though.
We are getting better.
We're getting better.
Yes.
We are getting better ourselves by like wanting to help other people. And I think that's also why I do what I do.
Why you come here no matter how treacherous the drive
well, even
to my
the youth
house.
center. I was going to say the youth center and working with youth, like I get better by helping them.
Oh, absolutely. You learn so much working with youth.
Mm-hmm.
They are our future.
But it's a learned behavior, and it's one that was not corrected. It's one that went under the radar by like all trusted adults at that time that could have possibly spoken into my life and been like, hey, you really shouldn't be doing that. Or even worse, there were some trusted adults that thought it was funny.
No, oh my God.
Mm-hmm.
Do not. Just as an adult, do not feed into that behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Children look up to adults even in their like teen years, whether they want to admit to it or not. So an adult's like, haha, yeah, you are kind of funny looking.
Mm-hmm.
That is going to stick with them forever.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm guilty of that too. If there's a student that throws like a real curveball of a joke at me and it's like...
But is it a joke or is it a joke about them?
So it's self-deprecating humor.
Nope.
I laugh, but then I always try and follow up with like but why did you say that? And then get them to like confront that as quickly as possible. It's like that was funny, but you don't actually feel that way, right? Because of X, Y, and Z. And then I show them like the flip side to that. It's like, that was funny because it was so wrong.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. You know, maybe I'll bring up some of the other things I found in my deep dives of the internet research. It's funny because some of the proven methods to work against self-deprecation line up so closely with imposter syndrome. I almost wish we'd coupled up the episodes. Because, like, the biggest one is accepting genuine compliments.
Mm.
Yeah. That's
still hard to do.
Another thing that I thought was really interesting when looking into it is keeping a journal. Because journals are a good way of record keeping your inner thoughts and emotions. For some people, they might not notice how often they're diving into their self-deprecation. I'm sure you did because it was your like main coping mechanism. But maybe if you saw how often you wrote negatively about yourself when you're reviewing your journals, you might have thought twice. Especially if you're revisiting your journals in a more like level-headed time. It could be a good way of auditing your thoughts and auditing your feelings and taking a hard look at how you're actually living your life, internally at least. And then the last big point was making the decision to be more positive.
Mm.
to a certain extent, we do have control over our feelings. You can wake up in a day and be like, oh my god, today is going to suck. And then the day is going to suck. But if you wake up and you think, right now I'm not feeling great, in this moment, recognize my feelings, I'm not feeling great, but then make the decision, I'm going to do something to make this day better. So just because you're not feeling great in the moment, doesn't mean you need to just keep feeding into it. Go buy yourself that stupid $7 coffee and be like, today is going to be a great day. I bought myself a $7 coffee. How could it get worse?
Mm-hmm.
Or try out a new makeup hack that you saw that looked interesting, or wear that favorite t-shirt of yours. Like, do something to break those negative thought patterns. And when you catch yourself doing them, much like with imposter syndrome, correct yourself. The whole fake it till you make it thing.
So I'm going to touch on that a little bit because I thought of an example that works with that. I struggle so much as like a creative person with like approaching a final product. I'll always start something and then I'll get close to the end and then I'm like, ooh, what if it turns out bad? I'm better off just keeping it right here rather than like going forward and like risking messing it up, right? And so what I have done, and this came in real clutch with this belt pouch that I made not too long ago, because it was a big project. This is something that I'm going to wear to Kuraheim every week going forward. This is going to become part of, my look. I was terrified to actually finish it. So what I did was at every step of the process, I found people in my life that I trusted, their opinions, and I sent them updates, like, here's where it's at now, and their responses helped me to better combat the negative voices in my head, because they were like, oh my god, it's so good, I love what you did with this, or is that wood? How did you get wood to look like a tooth like that? And like, their responses and our conversations going back forward, they helped like shine lights on the truth, and that is, like I was saying, I worked hard to get where I'm at right now.
Absolutely.
In terms of crafting and all of the other skills that I know. So that has sort of changed the journey of like the crafting for me now to a spot where it's like I can do work and not feel like I'm going to mess up. Now sometimes I don't always have a plan and then I get anxious. Like I'll jump into something like just dive right in without doing a ton of research.
Yeah.
But then that's my own fault. But certainly, I can see a project through to a final product and be confident that I'm not going to, quote, screw it up now.
Okay, that's good.
So, that's a technique that I've been using, and it seemed to, like, really help combat the self-deprecating in me. So, it could be something where it might help other people to, like, find people that you really value their opinions. The straight shooters in your life. People that you know are not going to steer you wrong.
Not the yes men, but the blunt ones.
Yeah. They'll let you know if what you're doing is actually like, it's not the best. But then they'll also really let you know when you're really doing right.
And those are the things you want to hold on to.
Yeah.
And when it comes to this episode, I was really wanting to avoid it because my self-deprecation didn't pop up as a coping mechanism. Mine popped up out of genuine honesty about myself. Being a person who is disabled, there's a lot of things that I am genuinely not good at. A lot of things that I genuinely will never be good at. And as a kid, I was diagnosed at 7, but I should have been diagnosed earlier. Like, I couldn't walk until I was 3. Most kids start walking before they're 1, and definitely by the time that they're 2.
Yeah.
So I was showing signs of struggling really early, but I didn't get that diagnosis until quite a bit into my life. And it has I both lost and gained my mobility over and over again. And so I needed to be genuinely honest with myself because I needed to advocate for myself. I wasn't put into a special ed program at school because I'm mentally as capable as anybody else. And because I was in the regular kids class, I needed to be the one to tell the teachers, hey, I can't go outside for recess right now. I'm having a low mobility day. Or in the schools that wanted to put me into PE classes when I physically couldn't do a lot of the PE exercises, I needed to be the one telling the PE coach, hey, I can't do this. And so being a little kid, constantly having to look up at adults and being like, hey, I am not capable. And I look really normal. I look really able-bodied, and it's not until you take a close inspection of my legs and my knees that you notice it's like, some ain't quite right here.
Something ain't adding up.
Something ain't adding up. Like, they took the stretcher and they pulled it the wrong direction. It's a good explanation.
Yeah.
You know, it is. Like, it's a little mean to say, but it is. And so I always had the mindset growing up that I am not good enough. Because there's a lot of areas where I'm not good enough, and I never will be. And so sometimes it bleeds into stuff where I'm maybe not the best, but maybe like at least mediocre. And so that was super freaking difficult. And like even today, I think a really great example is with our Kuro group. I really love archery. I adore it. But my muscle memory comes in very slowly. I'm very slow to learn physical motions repetitively. And I also have a cap when it comes to my physical speed. If I practice running every day, I will never learn how to run faster. My body is physically incapable of doing that. And it's the same thing with notching an arrow. I will never get quick enough to be on par with any of the even halfway decent archers. And that's just a thing. It sucks because I probably spend more time practicing in a week with a bow and arrow than I do with a sword. But with a sword, you don't need as much skill as the bow and arrow. So even though I'm really excited about the bow and arrow, I'm never going to be like a ranger. Like, I'm physically incapable of getting to that level. And it sucks. And so when I'm out on the field and like I have one of your bows right now that you're letting me borrow, and I like put pink tape on it, and I have a pink string, and it looks all super cool. And they're like, "Oh, you're gonna field with that?" And it's like, "No, I suck." And they're like, "Oh, don't say that. You'll get better." And it's like, "No, I suck, and I won't be getting too much better than I am now." It's hard a lot of time for able-bodied people to understand that sometimes it's not self-deprecation. It's really rough honesty. And then with me, because self-deprecation is not a keystone of my personality, but definitely like the whipped cream on top.
Oh my god, okay.
It's a little hard to tell the difference, because like one thing I am pretty good at is doing my nails and my makeup. I'm not great at it. I'm no Jeffree Star, but I'm decent enough. And I'll always like, oh my god, I look like a clown today. And so it's hard for people who don't know like my physical history to be like, oh, here's where she's being self-deprecating. Here's where she's being roughly honest about her physical incapabilities.
Yeah.
And then if I point that out to people, it makes them very uncomfortable. Like almost as uncomfortable as when people want to like push, hey, when are you having kids? Oh, I'm infertile. The cringe and the step back people take is like palpable. I can feel or taste the uncomfortableness that I give the individuals in my life when I point out things like, oh yeah, I'm disabled. Oh yeah, I can't do what you do. Oh yeah, I can't birth a child for you. The uncomfortableness that comes with it. And then you'll get comments like, oh, well, you shouldn't be so down on yourself, so low on yourself. And it's sometimes hard, because I'm sure that I'm not the only person out there who experiences, like, genuinely not being able to do something. And then having everybody tell them, oh, you can do it. And, like, how to remedy that. So, all that's to say, it's really important when you are, like, taking into account your self-deprecation of recognizing when it's honest, but it's probably not as often as you think it's being honest. Because I like to say I'm terrible at everything, but I try my best. But I'm only really terrible at the physical stuff. Like, all of the physical stuff. I mean, I've run this podcast for, like, 3 years now.
You have?
I have a whole second podcast that's on year 2.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And I have a real job outside of this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this isn't my full-time job. So, I can't say I'm terrible at everything.
Mm-hmm. That's so true what you were saying earlier about the knowing the difference between, like, being honest and, like, the self-deprecating, because as you were talking about not being able to physically learn how to knock an arrow fast enough, I immediately wanted to be like, no, you still can. Like, you can do it. Just keep at it. Because I just want to encourage you.
Yeah.
But also, like, I'm glad I didn't, because then you went into, like, I just physically can't. It's, like, my limit. It's like, okay.
Yeah. I've gotten a bit faster.
Mm-hmm.
But I could never, like, when I play video games, there is a cap at the difficulty of video game I play, no matter how much I play it.
Yeah. Because
that hand-eye coordination, my neurons won't be able to send the message fast enough.
Yeah.
And that's what it boils down to. And it's the same thing with knocking an arrow. It's the same thing with typing. If I was too much slower than I am now, I shouldn't be driving.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, like, I think so much faster than I can physically do, and it can be so frustrating that I can only imagine what it must be like for everybody else around me. It's like, bitch, keep up. And I'm like, I can't. I really, really can't.
I was gonna say, as a solution to that problem, I'm gonna go into, like, cure high for a little bit.
Of course you are.
Sticking around like a shield.
Oh, I mean, I usually do.
Sticking around a shield.
I usually do.
Offset that.
Yeah. It just... Well, self-deprecation for you was a coping mechanism. For me, it was honest. I'm sure for other people, it was many other things. It's something as humans that we latch onto because it's so easy to make fun of yourself. Because you're like, I'm not hurting nobody. Well, you are hurting somebody. You're hurting yourself, and you're also giving people around you permission to be disrespectful as well, which is why we should avoid it.
Yeah.
And only use self-deprecation, and not even self-deprecation, why we should only really set those, or say those things when they're genuinely honest.
Yeah.
Because if I don't make as many bad jokes about myself, I think people would take me more seriously when I'm like, hey, I honestly can't physically do the thing that you're wanting me to do, or the thing you're encouraging me to do. Because for me, archery is always going to be this fun little hobby I have. It'll never be my main weapon.
Yeah.
Even if, in my heart, I want it to be. I have this, like, image in my head of, like, going through the bushes and popping out and then ducking back down. Like, that's never going to be me.
I mean, you could still do that.
I can't
think
squat.
The bushes would probably be more helpful.
See,
gives you time.
The other thing is, I can't physically squat that low and walk at the same time. There's multiple things in that like imaginary scenario that's like, I can't do that, I can't do that. I'd probably lose my glasses, and then I can't see.
Oh gosh, that's true.
Like, there's so many things holding me back. And while I want to say it's funny, sometimes I should recognize how absolutely tragic it is that there's so many things that I love to do and want to do that I physically will never be able to do. Like, another thing I really loved was ice skating. I can't stay in the skates too long, otherwise my muscle will rip the bone out of its socket.
Oh my gosh.
Same thing with rollerblades. Anything that holds my ankles stiff, I can only do in short amounts of times unless I train up for it. Because my muscles are too strong, like too small for my bones. There's many limitations on me that are just that. They're limitations, and if I was less self-deprecating, people would take my limitations more seriously, because it won't be like, oh my god, there she is, making another distasteful joke about herself. Usually it's about my height, though. Let's be honest. A lot of my
it is often about your height.
It's either about my height, my weight, or me being absolutely fugly. If you guys can see his face right now.
Oh my god, that's so true. Those are the 3 categories.
Those are the 3 categories.
Yeah, it's almost always one of those. And it's like, are you serious? Okay.
So
No, no. Also, it's
Oh, dumb. My dumb blonde jokes.
Oh my God, there's more.
Oh
Because
my God, there's more categories.
I was thinking of like nobody likes me,
Oh,
or
yeah,
like I annoy
you're
everyone.
right. I
Yeah.
do that one a lot too.
You do that one a lot.
Maybe it is a keystone of my personality too. Oh no.
That's what we're discovering right now.
Oh no. This is why I didn't want to do this episode.
Oh, but it's so important to confront it, though.
It is. It really is. You've grown so much from the imposter syndrome episode that I should take this as my wake-up call to start working on myself a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. This episode was a downer, wasn't it?
Just a bit.
Just a
but
little bit.
also very important one to have.
All right.
I have closing advice this time.
What is your closing advice?
Don't find cheerleaders, find critics.
I like that. I like that. Along with that, I'm going to go back to old tried and true, be genuinely honest with yourself.
Yeah.
About your capabilities. Think about if it's something physical, think about if it was a feature on somebody else.
That's good.
Yeah. So, good luck, people out there. You're not as bad as you think you are, but I truly, honestly am.
Stop.
We'll see you guys later.
Oh my God. See ya.
Bye.
Join the conversation. Find us on social media at It's Working Podcast or link below.
Thanks for listening, and we hope you join us next week.
Be kind to yourself and to others.
What does it mean to be happy? 'Cause it looks like we all don't know. Glass half full or empty. Man, we just putting on a show. Oh, you know, I try to find a purpose in my life to drive me, to guide me. Oh, doctor, I feel dead inside.
Okay, let's talk about Lever Consulting. They help you create so many things. A perfect personal statement, application essays, presentations. They help create writings that truly represent you. They've got writers, editors, and even researchers. Lever Consulting can make all your stuff easy to read, understandable, and enjoyable. They truly take editing to the next level. Not only do they have flexible rates, they also offer assistance with college applications and job seeking. Check them out at leverconsulting.com and get a free consultation.